Robert Roberson is a prisoner in Texas. If the state has its way, he'll be dead within the hour. This is Execution Watch. Huntsville, Texas, death penalty capital of the Western world, where prison staff is preparing to put Roberson to death by injecting him with a deliberate drug overdose. During the next hour, the KPFT's Execution Watch will air live coverage of the killing in Texas, the state that carries out 1/3 of all U.S. executions. Execution Watch host Marlo Blue, criminal defense attorney Monique Sparks, Huntsville reporter outside the death house Sophia Moreau, general reporter Allie Sullivan, and featured interview guest Victoria Studer and Paige Hamilton, both artists, activists. The Execution Watch for Robert Roberson begins. Good evening. We have never hoped for a show to be canceled more than this one. Tonight, the state of Texas ushers Robert Roberson into the death chamber. To our listeners around the world, thank you for joining us on this Thursday, October the 17th, 2024 edition of Execution Watch. I'm Marlo Blue. If you're tuning in for the Progressive Forum on KPFT Houston, they will be back next week in their regularly scheduled 6 o'clock time slot. Execution Watch is produced by a dedicated staff of volunteers. We report live each and every time an execution is scheduled in the state of Texas. The live video stream of this show can be found right now on our Execution Watch Facebook and simulcast on HoustonMediaSource.org. We will have expert legal analysis as well as live reports from Huntsville and breaking news regarding any last-minute judicial attention. There will be a featured interview with Victoria Studer, sister of Scott Panetti, and the artist who does the Execution Watch theme music, and fellow musician and anti-death penalty activist Paige Hamilton. Before we start the show, an update on Clinton Young. On October 15th, Clinton Young was found guilty of killing Doyle Douglas of Ore City and Samuel Petrie of Eastland, Texas. He was given life in prison. Here's a statement from the Clinton Young Foundation, and I quote, "It is with a very heavy heart and complete shock and disbelief that we have to announce that Clinton was convicted of capital murder and given a life sentence today. Obviously, we believe this is an unjust outcome. We cannot comment on the trial itself at this moment because the case will go to the appeals phase now." Tonight, the state of Texas is going to execute Robert Roberson. Now age 57, Roberson was convicted and sentenced to death for the killing of his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki Curtis, in Palestine, Texas. Roberson was subsequently charged in her death. If the execution proceeds, Roberson could be the first person in the U.S. executed for a murder conviction tied to a diagnosis of shaken baby syndrome. His attorneys and a diverse coalition of supporters who say he's innocent and was convicted on faulty scientific evidence. There were 2 possibilities still for this execution to be stayed, either Texas Governor Greg Abbott or the U.S. Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court has been denied. 90 minutes before the 6 p.m. execution was scheduled to start, we have heard other news. In an unusual turn of events, a Texas House committee is also trying to delay the execution by taking the extraordinary step of issuing a subpoena for Roberson to testify in a hearing next week about his case. Joining us first tonight is our reporter stationed just outside of the death house in Huntsville, Texas, activist Sophia Moreau, anti-death penalty activist, reporting from outside of the death house. Hello, Sophia. Thank you for joining us. Any news?
Well, as you said, the Texas District Judge out of Travis County issued a temporary restraining order a short time ago. And what we've heard is that the Attorney General is now trying to appeal that to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. So here on the ground, what we've heard is that everything is kind of suspended at the moment, and we are just waiting here. And of course, we may be here until about 10:30 or so tonight because the warrant will expire at midnight, and they need to have enough time for the protocol to be carried out. So we may be here a while.
Right. So tell us what the scene is like out there. We can hear that there are people. We can hear Gloria Rubeck with her bell phone.
It's very noisy. It's very crowded. It's very hard to get a count here of how many people are here. But this is the largest I've seen in many years. There's probably at least 50 people here in support of stopping this execution, and there is at least that number of media. So there's probably at least 100 people out here, and it is noisy. It is loud. The family and friends of Robert are already in the waiting room. They went in about 5:15, and so we're just waiting to see if they cross that line to go into the building.
And of course, for all of our listeners who may not understand what that means, explain what crossing the line means.
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit. Explain what?
For our listeners who may be new to this, explain what crossing the line means, what it signals.
On the building across the street, 12th Street cuts the house, the hospitality house from the main prison. And so in the hospitality house, the witnesses and the media are waiting before they can actually cross the street and go into the prison, into the death house to witness the execution. So they're kept waiting in this holding room. And they are there without any cell phones. Just like when you go into a prison, you can't bring in any of your media with you. So they are sitting there in a room without any access to updated information. They will hear a phone ring, and that phone, when it rings, will say to them that it means it's on or it's off, and they won't know anything until they hear a phone ring. So we may know something before they do, just simply because there's so much national media on the ground here. They may hear something.
That's very interesting. So can you tell us if you know who's standing witness for Mr. Roberson?
Robert, his wife Manuela is going to be there. His Brian, who was the investigator, who has now come out and said that he believes that Robert is innocent, is going to witness this. And Linda Snyder and her husband David are there as well.
And Linda's our regular Huntsville reporter.
Right. So now, of course, you just said that a very interesting thing, because we do know that recently the man who did the original investigation has come out, as you said, to say that he believes that this is not the right thing to do, that there is doubt about.
No, he is 100% convinced that he is not guilty. I spoke with him today. We were at the hospitality house down the street on 12th Street with the family and friends of Robert. And Brian is really carrying a lot of guilt and responsibility. He's really struggling. They're all struggling, of course. But he is absolutely certain that that the wrong man, that he should never have been arrested.
Kenneth Foster.
Please let us know, Sophia, let us know if they cross, or if you hear of anything else, if you don't mind.
I'll just add one more thing. Please. Before we go, and then I'll let you know if I hear any update.
Good.
Robert's brother, Thomas, and his family is here in the protest too. They were not able to get on the list to witness the execution, so they're here as well.
Would you like to see if they would be interested in being interviewed?
I'll ask them when you meet me and go to the other guests. I'll talk to them.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sophia. We will be back. Thank you. At this point in time, let's get a little bit of explanation about this case, and how we got to this point. Let's go to Monique Sparks, please. Monique.
Good evening. There's so much to say. I don't even know.
I know things are in total chaos, but help us out as much as you possibly can. First, with the basis of the case and with the updates of what we know so far tonight.
So why this case is so different and why it has everyone in such an uproar is because this is the first time someone will be executed based on the shaken baby syndrome. And all of us in the legal community know that forensics changed with time. And clearly 20 years ago, what forensics were, what the understanding of the shaken baby syndrome and what we understand it to be now are two different things. In fact, even the expert that's testified in Mr. Robertson's case has found to not be credible in other testimony regarding what shaken baby syndrome is. And just like all types of medical science, from cancer to everything to cancer to any other kind of medical diagnosis, there's been major evolvements. And so I think that that's why the criminal defense community, we see the legislative community, everybody is standing behind us. So in 2003, he was convicted, but it was on the basis of shaken baby syndrome. And in fact, even his lawyer in the opening statement said, this is a shaken baby case, believing that that in fact is what happened based on, I believe, the experts at that time. And after that, other things that were taken in consideration as him being the only kind of singled out person is kind of his flat effect. What has now come out is that he is on the autism spectrum, and that also kind of helped explain his behavior that day. There have been a series of appeals, but as of late, the Supreme Court did deny the stay, right? So that was kind of going into today, our last update. The Supreme Court found that there's no cognizable claim. And the issue with this is you really only get one shot at a writ. But however, if there's new evidence, if there's something that you couldn't raise in that previous writ, and I think now that they are trying to come up with a new writ claim under junk science. Because what do we do if you've exhausted all of your writ claims, but now later it's found that the science that was used in your case is no longer applicable? And so despite those things, the Supreme Court found that there was no claims. What we have is a very brave judge out of Travis County, though, that today, shortly, I believe, as we were preparing for the show, Judge Jessica Magnum. I've never been in front of her, but salute to have that much courage, especially in Texas, to know what she's going up against. And clearly, as soon as she did that, we had an appellate response from the Attorney General. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're waiting to see what's going to happen.
And that is something that is not unusual here in Texas. That is,
That
soon
correct.
as a stay is written, then the Attorney General, in this case, Ken Paxton is the Texas Attorney General, immediately files this other thing and it continues on. Is that the way it goes?
Yes, I think what's interesting but in this case, we have a district court judge that filed this. I mean, I guess within hours before the execution. And so, yeah, you're correct in that the Attorney General can go on and appeal it and move it forward. So he still could be executed today.
Okay, our producer, Elizabeth Stein, is here on set with me at this moment. Elizabeth, what do you have to say?
Yes, first time I've been on my show in 17 years. But Monique, is it true? I had read that the judge that ruled was petitioned by the legislators who are promoting Roberson's cause, and that they filed it like before her, like about 5 o'clock today, to ask for the stay.
That is correct. That is correct.
I believe the members. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say also I think that's another unique thing about this case. Unfortunately, we've had to have a couple of, we've met a couple of times within this last month or so on executions, but we haven't had one where we have legislators that are behind stopping execution, and we have a lot of legislative activity that are behind trying to stay this execution as well.
Well, my understanding is that there was a bipartisan group of legislators, about half dozen, who actually went to death row and met with Robert Roberson to see for themselves what he had to say, and they were very impressed with him. And as a bipartisan group, one of the things they did a few days ago was issue a subpoena, which they do have the power over, for him to appear before the committee 4 days after the execution. So I think that may have been the basis for them requesting that the judge issue a stay or a basically stop the execution. Who knows how far it'll go?
I think that what I will say is that everything has been tried. Clemency has been requested, the subpoenas from the legislative committee. You know, this brave, I have to go to Travis County just to meet this Jessica Magnum. That everybody is trying, and let's see if the governor wins.
Let's just see if the governor wins.
I'm wondering, Monique, on what basis the Supreme Court, how did they rule?
They denied the stay, and actually, what they ruled is there were no cognizable claims. And like I said, despite which, when I read it, I'm like, there's several claims. I have not read the whole procedural history of this case, but you get one shot on with your writ, and that's why even the legislators are trying to come up with this jump science writ. In 1107, you can file a writ for ineffective assistance of counsel, for involuntary plea, for actual innocence, and for ineffective involuntary plea, ineffective assistance of counsel, time delay, or Brady if Brady was withheld. But
And what's Brady?
we don't.
And-
Go ahead.
What's Brady again?
Brady is if there was information that was favorable to the defendant at the time. So like a Michael Morton situation where there was actual more evidence that wasn't tested and it was withheld
Like
by the state.
Prosecutorial misconduct, or one form of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Monique, thank you very much. If you see something else or you want to join in a little bit later into the conversation, please stick around. We will be back to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in Allie right now. Allie Sullivan is an anti-death penalty activist, and she's a friend of Robert Roberson's wife, Manuela Doris Roberson. Allie, thank you for joining us tonight.
I would say that I'm glad to be with you, but I'm not glad to be with you tonight. But I'm grateful that you guys are doing this program. I was actually there the day that Manuela and Robert were married about 2.5 years ago. And I just remember this huge, like, Manuela was so overcome with joy, as most people would be on their wedding day, that she had finally found the person that was her other half, and that, like, he was the most important person in the world to her. And so seeing what Manuela is going through at this time, and the rest of Robert's family is nothing short of devastating. I myself have lost several individuals that I was close to who were executed, though fortunately none of them were my partner. And I think this is just a powerful reminder that you can have the best legal team in the world. You can have this whole cavalry of resources behind you with the Innocence Project and activists and legislators and so many resources that the vast majority of folks on death row can only dream of. And it still might not be enough to stop this execution. And so I just want to give our hats off to Gretchen Sween and the rest of the legal team who have given this their all. I listened to her testimony yesterday at the hearing in Austin, and you can tell how passionate she was about this. And I'm really grateful that Robert had a legal team that stood behind him no matter what. And we don't see that with everybody. And so Gretchen is the type of attorney that we would wish that everybody on death row would have. And Robert is definitely very lucky to have that. And it's just absolutely heart-wrenching that in spite of this, she has given this her all. She and her team have thrown everything that they possibly could at the wall to try to stop this execution. And we still don't know if it's going to be stopped. So I think this is just a strong reminder that that the system is so irreparably broken, and like it's devastating for the folks on death row that don't have these kinds of resources. And I know tonight is a time that many of us, including those on death row, feel a lot of hopelessness. Yeah.
How is Manuela taking this?
Ooh, hold on.
while we wait for
Not sure what happened to my audio. Sorry about that.
Ali. Ali. Okay, I was asking you the question of how is Manuela doing?
She's having a hard time. I don't know how else to say it, but she's having a hard time. This is so absolutely traumatic and devastating for her. Um, yeah, I think Robert is being the strong one in this situation, and we see this a lot from the guys that are on death row, that they show such tremendous courage in these moments. But Manuela is having a really difficult time, and fortunately, she has folks around her tonight that are able to comfort her and that are going to be in the execution chamber witnessing with her. But I'm not sure if I should say this on air, but when Robert first got an execution date, or maybe a little bit before he got the date, but when we knew that the date was coming, I asked Manuela, like, how are you doing? I just wanted to check on her. And she said that if they kill Robert, they will be killing 2 people. And that just has stuck with me since. And every time I think of that text message, I get really teary eyed, because this is the quintessential example of the collateral damage of the death penalty. Manuela should not be going through this. No family or friends of folks condemned to die should be going through this. And the death penalty hurts so many more people than those that it's purported to help. And it's devastating to watch her going through this. I have no words.
Ali, do you know if Manuela has actually spoken with Brian Wharton, the investigator?
I assume she has, because they've been at the hospitality house together, and I know she's very well connected to the legal team, so I couldn't imagine her not speaking to him on multiple occasions.
And did you actually visit Robert as well?
I have not formally visited Robert. I was in Texas this summer visiting Ramiro Gonzalez, who we know is executed at the end of June.
Right.
And Robert was having visitation a couple cells over from where I was at, and so I got to see him that way, but I've not formally sat down with Robert and had a proper visit.
Well, Ali, I don't know, forgive me if you're not the right person for me to ask this, but what do you know about the complications of Robert's late in life diagnosis of autism?
I do not know much about that, besides just what the rest of us have heard in terms of that it played a big role in why they targeted Robert from the get-go. And I mean, I suspect that I have autism, and my mom as well, and I know that our responses to various social situations are not the same as what we would expect in other people. That is something I've seen in myself for a long time, and so I can kind of understand that, how difficult it must be to be misjudged for not having the same emotional responses as other people might.
You mean like his response to the death of his daughter and being questioned about
Right.
it? Okay.
Right.
Well, Ali, thank you so much. We appreciate you spending some time with us. I know that you have other obligations that you need to go to, but please pass on to Manuela our deepest sympathies for this. We appreciate your time today.
I will. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say real quick that I'm thinking of all the guys on the road tonight. I have a number of friends there in Polensky unit, and it's a tough night for all of us. So we're with you guys as well.
Go ahead and give a shout out if you'd like.
I mean, my friend Pete Russell is there on death row, and he's still fighting for his life, and Ricky Cummings and Rob Will and a number of guys there, Courtney Robinson, Bernardo, and yeah, we're with you tonight and thinking about you as we do every day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go back, if we can, please, to Sophia for just a quick thing before we go to Monique. Sophia, has there been any change?
We're working to reopen his case again.
Our
He's a fighter. He's ready for
Audio
round
is
3.
breaking up a little bit, but
So
I think
please
you guys
put
can hear us
no
clearly.
foundation
This
page,
is, I'm going to introduce to you, this is Jennifer.
He's another example.
She is the sister-in-law of Robert.
All help we can
She
make
and her husband Thomas and their kids are here at the hospitality house all afternoon. And just to piggyback on what Ollie said, yes, Brian was there at the hospitality house with Manuela the whole time today. And you know, they're in the waiting to go in the witness room together. So let me just turn it over to Jennifer for you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you.
The other one.
Yesterday?
Hello.
Hello, Jennifer. Thank you so much. You are now on Execution Watch on KPFT Radio, and we appreciate you spending some time. So tell us what kind.
Just tell them you can't. They can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Just-
It's breaking up really bad.
Just
go
talk,
ahead and
Jennifer.
talk and maybe tell them your experience today, and tell them a little bit about what you think of the case.
Okay. So this is injustice. This has been a very, very long day.
You need to talk loud so they can hear it.
Highs and lows when we got the news about that the Austin judge had granted the restraining order. We all thought that meant we weren't going to be sitting here right now. We thought that he was going to live. We didn't know that this was going to have to go to the Court of Criminal Appeals. So now it's kind of a downer again. We're sad. I'm furious. I have so much anger in me right now. Because like I had said a while ago, this is not a legal execution. This is murder that we're doing right now. The same thing that they're accusing Robert of, we're doing to him. There is an abundance of evidence that shows this. Nikki died of pneumonia. She did not die of blunt force trauma. She did not die from shaken baby syndrome. I just can't. I still can't believe we're sitting here today with all the media, with all the support from the Texas legislatures. I mean, nothing like this has ever been done before for somebody. They support him. They believe in him, and we're still sitting here praying and begging the state of Texas not to take an innocent man's life. And I'm furious. Like I said, I can't even think straight right now.
So how long were you in the hospitality suite tonight?
We were there for about 3 hours. About 3 hours.
You got to talk to Robert.
Yeah, we got to speak to Robert, and he is the strongest, most faithful man.
The next person.
He makes us feel better. I'm supposed to be on the phone saying, "Hey, we got this," and I can't even say that. But you know what? He says it to me. He tells me, "Be strong, believe in God, be obedient to God, and this is going to be okay. I love you. Be strong." When that's supposed to be my job. That's my job. It's supposed to make him feel better. He's the one who's fixing potentially lose his life for something he didn't do, and he's the one making me feel better, praying for us when we're, like I said, that's my job to do for him, and I did it. He did it for me.
My name is Camphorella.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And your husband is with you? Does he have
Yes,
any?
ma'am, my husband's with me.
Does
He's
he
out
have
there
anything-
protesting right now.
All right. Well, that's an important aspect. We're hoping that, of course, Gloria and her bullhorn can be heard inside the chamber. We do hope so. And hope they know what we are trying to do.
Held in the hand.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you, Sophia. We will come back to you. Please let us know if you have any other news. Let's just check back in, if we may, with our attorney, Monique. Monique, I know you've been reading these papers and looking over. Monique Sparks is with us right now. Have you learned anything new, Monique?
I still don't see a ruling on the Attorney General's appeal. And that's kind of what we're on pins and needles waiting for. I know it can happen pretty quickly. And so I'm checking the media sites to see what happens with the appeal.
So at the moment, as far as we know, the stay has been lifted and the execution will start as soon as the witnesses cross the road. Is that correct?
Um, I have not, from what I can find online, because this is kind of real time, the
Right.
Texas Attorney General's appeal, I have not seen a ruling on that. So we're still, based on what my report has been, we're still at the judge's ruling and then waiting for a ruling on the appeal from the Texas Attorney General.
Thank you. As you can see, this is a very chaotic scene. It's got a lot of different moving parts. This often does happen with Texas executions. Elizabeth Stein, our producer here, and a longtime producer. You've been here ever since the beginning with Ray Hill. You and Ray actually started this show off. Along with, of course, Mark Pirtle, who has done so much.
Well, Mark Pirtle came later, but it really changed the show in a very positive way. Jim Skelton and Otis McClay were there at the early days too. But we started in 2008, actually. So, yeah, unfortunately, we're still doing it.
It's the only show I've ever hoped that would completely be canceled, and it never. I can't believe we're still doing it at this late of time. And as someone was saying earlier in the protest over in Huntsville, I believe this is like 601. She said it was 597 since the execution began again in 75?
After Furman.
Yeah, after the Furman decision.
I'll look it up.
Is there any way that you can check again with Ken Paxton's office while we do this?
Oh, I've been scanning
Scrolling.
and I've not seen anything.
Very fluid, live radio, live television, folks. So be a little bit patient with us. Let's go ahead and go to some of our guests right now as well, if that's okay. Let's go to Victoria Studer and Paige Hamilton. Victoria Studer is a writer and performer. She's the one who gave us the Execution Watch theme song, Death by Texas. And Paige Hamilton is a legendary guitarist and founder of the band Helmet. Victoria, Death by Texas is such an apt theme song for Execution Watch. People may be surprised to know that you recorded it before the show even started. What inspired you to write and record the song?
Naturally, the pending execution of Scott Panetti, my brother.
And what was the landmark Supreme Court ruling that bears your brother's name?
Panetti versus Quarterman.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was there. I was the only person in my family that was there, surrounded by phenomenal lawyers of the Texas Defender Service. And it was a monumental time, not only in my life, but a monumental time for the United States of America. And, I think about it sometimes, and it seems like a nightmare or a dream, to be on the steps of the Supreme Court, walking up, to the highest court of the most powerful nation in the world, and you're there because your brother is on death row. And it was a incredibly powerful time, but it was also a very very sad time. It was around mid 2000s, and the show Execution Watch started a couple years later. And looking back on all this and hearing what's going on today, it's emotional for me because I know about the hospitality house. I went through 2 execution dates with Scott Panetti. Our whole family, I feel for the family and the friends of all these people affected, by this form of punishment. I'm anti-death penalty, especially for wrongful sentencing and for people that are innocent. I hear this and I don't mean to, kind of be, nonchalant about it, but I know I just sort of sit here and go, yeah, this happened before. And Elizabeth's on and Elizabeth's talking on the show. And I was there, and Gloria Ruback, she's there. And I know the names, and it's just really, ironic, that it's still happening in the United States of America. We are still doing this barbaric form of punishment. It's really, 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 it's really, really pathetic.
Victoria, were you anti-death penalty before all this happened to your brother?
That's quite a question. When I was at University of Wisconsin Stout, I had a speech class, and we were given choices on whether we were for or against something, right? And I have a speech minor. And I picked, shamefully, pro-death penalty. I did. And, I just listed the reasons and flippantly, and I think I got the worst grade, like a C+. And a year later, I got a phone call in my dorm room at University of Wisconsin Stout, and I got the call. And our whole life changed. My whole family's life changed. Our worlds were flipped upside down, and I'll admit that, because I want people who are for the death penalty to understand that this is like a little drop of water in a still water, and it trickles into all the other innocent family members and friends and the community. When this happens, the innocent people are tortured, mentally tortured. My aunts, my uncles, the children of the person who is being executed, they don't stop loving their father or mother. They don't stop. So you're also torturing the family of the accused, So that was my wake up call, and I've been very, I've only taken on my brother Scott Panetti's case. I'm anti-death penalty, but I've only put all my energies into his case specifically because I know it. And this show is so important because it brings all of the minute details of every death penalty case to the forefront. Every case is unique. Every human being on death row is a unique, in my opinion and belief, child of God. And so this show is so important to talk about each human being that we are executing in our society. So my hat's off to Execution Watch, and that's an understatement.
So let's bring in Paige Hamilton right now. Paige, thank you for joining us as well. We appreciate it. You are not only a musician, but you are also an activist against the death penalty. What is your connection with Victoria's song, Death by Texas?
20 or 21 or 22 or something years ago, Vic approached me about, told me I knew about her brother, Scott, being on death row, and she approached me and asked if I could contribute my time to help her get this song done, and I said of course, that's it basically. I think when Vic's talking about being a young college student and being pro death penalty, and then having such a personal situation where her brother is a death row inmate, it shook her, and she became educated. And I think what you guys are doing, as Vic said, is educating people, because we're in this massive country of 330 million people, and it's easy to dismiss something that happens in someone else's life and have no consideration for a person, a family, what everyone goes through. This is emotional. I've never participated in anything like this before, and I don't know Robert. I've never met Scott personally, but I think people, we have to shine a light on what's going on, and as Vic said, it's barbaric. We're in this civilized nation, the biggest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, and we're still executing people. And I do a little bit of research, that 4% of the people that are executed are innocent, and as Elizabeth said earlier, it's not just about that, and I agree 100%. It's about it's not a deterrent. First of all, we know that, and it's more expensive than incarcerating someone.
Right.
And it's just it's hard to wrap my head around it. Thank you for what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. We do appreciate that. You play to massive audiences. There's no question about that. And just as Gloria Ruback was using her megaphone, you sort of do the same thing by playing Death by Texas. Can you tell us what sort of reaction you get from audiences, especially overseas, when you perform Death by Texas?
Well, I've played Vic's song with her here in Los Angeles, where I live, and Vic used to live. The last Helmet album is called Left, and I got flack for that, for having, as I get older and feel more compelled to express my political opinions, you deal with it, and I just think having a dialogue in this country is so important. And as I've gotten older, the things that matter to me. I'm much more emotional and passionate about than when I was a young man and had less sort of experience. So we'll be actually, speaking of large audiences, we're playing with friends of mine, a band called Lincoln Park in Dallas next month. And that should be a large audience. I've never been one to stand on a soapbox, but I'm always open to discourse. And one thing I did prior to the pandemic is sit on the edge of stage after a show and talk to people, because I'm terrible at social media. I just don't. I'm not really engaged. I've played in 60 countries in the world, and for 35 years, and we're all, we need to unite. We need to have a common understanding that we're all equal, and that it's the lack of it's easy to sit in your armchair and have opinions about someone that we've never met, and until someone is directly affected by something, they don't necessarily speak out, and that's all I can say. I'm not going to tell someone how to vote or who to vote for,
right,
or what to believe in, but I love that we have a conversation about these things.
Paige and Victoria, we're going to get right back to you, but it looks like
Yes.
Sophia has something else to tell us over in Huntsville. Sophia, can you hear me? We're back to you right now. What do you have to say?
Well, really, we are just sitting here waiting. There's no movement across the street at all. Everything seems to be just waiting to see what happens with the CCA,
Right.
and we're just waiting.
So thank you very much. So while our producer, Elizabeth Stein, continues to check to see about CCA and with the Attorney General, let me ask Victoria and Paige, you know, what is the role of artists in calling attention to injustices like the death penalty? How do you feel responsible?
The fact that we have an audience, it's I know there are pundits and people that say that, you know, actors and actresses and musicians should not speak out, and you know, that's ridiculous. You know, I have friends, you know, in bands, like, you know, very political bands like Rage Against the Machine, who are very outspoken, and they have their beliefs, and we've had conversations for 25 years about issues, and with many of my friends in bands, and it's not necessarily about us trying to cram our opinions down someone's throat, but if you have a forum, and you have an opportunity, you know, to, as I said, some people were upset that, you know, our new album was more political than our previous albums. There's always been politics in our music,
Right.
Always. I've always spoken about it. It's more social, you know, it's observation that I, as a songwriter and lyricist and singer, have always addressed. And here we are. I've had this band since 1989, and many of the issues that I addressed from 1989 through the 90s and 2000s we're still battling in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys talk about your European audience. There is the proximity of all those different cultures and languages that everyone speaks in Europe force them to interact with different cultures and be, I think, more tolerant, more accepting. And I think in the United States, it's so massive. But as I said, I've played in every state in this union, and I've met great people, you know, everywhere in this country, and we can't stop expressing ourselves and you know, not judging someone because we disagree with them.
Do you find it surprising that people, when they hear that there is still capital punishment in a place like Texas?
I think my friends in Europe certainly are. I saw that Oklahoma and Texas lead, you know, the leading countries in the death penalty, and that's, you know, I have a trans godchild in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they go through, you know, all this this stuff that is unnecessary. You know, it's like we're human beings. We're talking about human beings here, human lives, and as Vic said, and as you guys have said, all the people that are affected by this. It's not just the person that has been, you know, convicted, you know, wrongfully or not, of a crime that we're you know, decided, well, we're just going to take this life. I can't.
And you know, I was just thought of something for those of us who've lived a bit of life, you know, a few decades or more. Remember, I'm a 1971 model. I'm a, you know, child of the 70s and 80s. And does everybody remember, or I'd like to ask the audience to think about the music of those decades where we said brothers and sisters a lot in the music, and love and peace. Let's bring that back. Let's bring it back. The love, peace. We are a human body in the world. I'd love for that trend, and that in the music business, I would just love to have more humanity, and that we are all human beings with feelings and emotions and desires and dreams. and to look out for each other more, to care about each other more. That's a dream of mine. I'm never going to give up that dream. And it has to do with music, like going back to the question. Nelson Mandela said music is the great communicator. And I lived in Switzerland. I'm a Swiss citizen. I'm in the Basel Zeitung. If anybody wants to look up the Basel Zeitung, there's an article in German on this case of Scott Panetti, my brother, and it is true. It brings us together. Music somehow is magical and wonderful, and Page touring all over the world. We got to see him play in Basel and in Bern. It's I give a lot of credit to these musicians that tour the world. It's no joke. It's hard, and they have a right to say what they feel as a human being.
Right.
Like they have a right, to say what they want to say when they've paid their dues, like Paige has since 1989. Just at least open your ears. You don't have to agree. But we were, by the way, Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine had Scott on his website with Surge of System of the Down. I just remembered that when Paige brought that up.
Right.
And I did, yeah. He was on that website. So
thank you both so
people,
much.
I thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your insight and really appreciate the music. We listen, of course, every time. It's a main part of Execution Watch. And thank you so much for doing all of that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks,
Yeah.
Victoria. Let's check in one more time with Monique, please. Monique Sparks. Did you learn anything else while you were looking over these papers?
Nothing yet. As of the internet, nothing yet. So
no sign of anything else happening there, right? All right. Thank you so much. Let's go back in and check in with Sophia as well. Sophia, what's happening in Huntsville where you are?
Same, since we've been here, the protesters have not left. We did hear some reports that maybe some people heard about the temporary restraining order and thought, oh, well, it's not going to happen tonight, and turned around and didn't show up tonight here to protest. But the protesters are still here. Nobody is leaving. The media is still here. There's a lot of confusion. We don't know. This has never happened. This is so unexpected. And so we just wait. We're just waiting. I will say to you that even though he does not want to appear and talk to anybody, out of the corner of my eye, I am watching Robert's brother stand there with a sign of his brother on a picture of his brother saying, do not execute. And there's a picture of his brother on it. And he's struggling. I mean, this is hard for us. But I just want to remind the people that are the witnesses that are here for Robert waiting, Manuela, Linda, Brian, David, and the family members that are out here. This is almost unbearable. The emotions are just running wild, and we don't know what to do. We're just waiting.
You said that there was quite a lot of media out there. I know that there's become a lot of national attention. Is there also international media there tonight?
I'm not sure, because when we logged in, I didn't have time to see a lot of the media. I do know that there's a lot of Texas media out here. Right. I see a lot of local channels out of Houston and Dallas. I also know that Death Row Stories, the documentary team that has been following this, are here. Have you guys seen any international media here? There's a lot of media that is behind the chain here that we can't get to.
That you can't see.
That may be going in to witness. We don't know who's over there.
Sophia, thank you so much for being our eyes and ears. We appreciate it. In fact, we thank all of you for being a part of tonight's show. As we wait to find out the fate of Robert Roberson, I'm afraid we do have to bring to a close this edition of Execution Watch.
Mauro, I just wanted to add that when we find out something, whatever time it is tonight, we'll put something on our Facebook page, Execution Watch.
That's right. Again, our next scheduled broadcast date is Tuesday, February the 5th, 2025, as Texas prepares to send Stephen Nelson into the death chamber in Huntsville, Texas. Execution Watch will cover the state-sanctioned killing beginning at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time with our live news coverage. We will welcome your opinions on social media and beyond. Go to executionwatch.org to learn more about the death penalty and executions in the state of Texas, and please subscribe to our mailing list. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search Execution Watch, and past shows on YouTube. We can now be found on Twitter or X as well, and we'd appreciate a follow. Our thanks again to the entire Execution Watch crew, Monique Sparks, our legal analyst, Sophia Moreau, our eyes on the ground right there in Huntsville, video director Mark Pirtle, technical director Otis McClay, engineer Howard Reynolds, production assistant Mel Peterson, social media Elise Binch and Zara Sheridan, executive producer and tonight co-host Elizabeth Ann Stein. If you're listening live on 90.1 FN, please stay tuned for the please stay tuned. This has been a special edition of Execution Watch. I'm Marlo Blue. Good night.
Don't you know? Some accused are innocent. Some get good lawyers, most don't. State of Texas, killing machine. Don't you know they're killing people? 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 Of God. It's insane. In Jesus' name.